One of my favorite filmmakers, Guillermo del Toro, once said, "In fairy tales, monsters exist to be a manifestation of something that we need to understand. Not only a problem we need to overcome, but they also need to represent, much like angels represent the beautiful, pure, eternal side of the human spirit, monsters need to represent a more tangible, more mortal side of being human. Aging, decay, darkness, and so forth. I believe that monsters originally, when we were cavemen, sitting around a fire, needed to explain the birth of the sun and the death of the moon, and so on. I feel that monsters are here in our world to help us understand it. They are essential parts of a fable." Alright, I think we're ready to roll. Welcome, fellow cinephiles, film enthusiasts, and relaxation seekers. My name is Cinephile ASMR, and today we are going to dive into all the spooky, the scary, the paranormal, and everything that lies in between our minds late at night. This is a completely new type of video for me. I've always wanted to film out in the open, out in the elements, and this is the first time, and maybe perhaps one of the riskiest. In the middle of the night, there's like some people on the playground, so if you hear some background noise, that's kind of the point. Giving off really the natural beauty that the world has to offer, while also providing you with some frightening tingles. If you see some bunnies behind me, that's because they are roaming everywhere. This is animal paradise, and I love it. It's organic, it's raw, it's natural, it's all happening in real time. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, and I have printed out roughly 5 horror stories that I scoured the internet for, mainly Reddit, actually pretty much only Reddit, and I found 5 stories that I felt were worthy of talking about, each diverse, each within their unique flavoring, and I really cannot wait to jump into that with you guys. But before we do so, remember to like, follow, comment if you'd like more videos like this. I'm very excited for this. Cannot wait to see how it comes out. And remember to follow me on my social medias. Follow me on my TikTok right here. I upload daily. That community is growing as well. So let's just jump into the first horror story, titled House Guest. Now these are accounts from several different Redditors. A lot of them proclaim that these are true stories. Of course, go in with this belief, grain of salt, no salt. I love to indulge, and I take everyone's word seriously, so it's gonna be really fun, really scary as well. These ones really make you think. This first one is called House Guest. True story time. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and my parents had just separated. My mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room, but I preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the first floor, and I remember that it was in the middle of the summer, and my mom had a window open in her room. And this was directly behind the bed. It was above the headboard. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I distinctly remember sitting up and seeing that our cat was sitting in the door frame of my mom's room. Her door was open, and you could partially see into my bedroom. This was strange because our cat was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mom and wake her up. In the 3 to 4 seconds it took her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up in the door frame, and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mother proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window. Again, we were on the first floor, and it was maybe a 3-foot drop to the ground. She quickly followed, and were able to start screaming for help, and someone called 911. The police came, but didn't see any signs of forced entry. only that our front door was unlocked, which led them to believe the man must have exited that way. The strange thing was that my mom swore up and down that she had locked the door that night with the deadbolt and chain lock. But about a week or so later, she was cleaning the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The police were called again, but all they could do was speculate that the man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. That one really terrifies me, because your home is like your inner sanctum. That is your safe space from the world, and to have that compromised and jeopardized by some stranger is just terrifying. And it really is interesting to see how quickly the mother was called to action, and she immediately looked towards her child instead of herself. I really like that story. I'm not saying like because it was good, but because it was gripping. It was really gripping. Now the next story is titled, Did You Hear That? These titles I kind of made up on my own. These stories are not mine, but the titles I kind of made for the heading of each story. I was sitting in my room after getting out of work on the second floor. Little bro, my brother, is downstairs watching TV. The dog is in the hallway outside my room door sleeping. All of a sudden, the dog starts making all kinds of ruckus, jumping around, barking, clacking nails, howling, etc. I go to get up and to see what's up, and I hear from downstairs, "Aw, that's a good girl," in a deep male voice. It didn't sound like my little brother, so I go, "Oh, you're home early," thinking it's my dad's friend or roomie as I open the door. Soon as I'm out there, there is no one at all but the dog wagging her tail, staring at the empty end of the hallway. My little brother comes from upstairs to yell at me for getting his dog riled up. He said he heard the same voice thinking it was me or our roommate. We did a once all over the house with my butterfly knife and his BB gun, but there was nobody. Still gives me the spooks to this day. I think why I really enjoy this one is because a lot of times we hear our names being called or just something that isn't there, but you can swear almost passionately that there is someone just to turn out that there isn't. And that idea alone just always makes me think, and I hope it did for you too. Now the third story is titled Childhood Memory. My 9-year-old daughter just came into my office and told me that while watching TV, she saw the reflection of a, quote, skinny man with a long beard and wearing a miner's helmet walk from our hallway into the kitchen and disappear. My husband is in bed, and I was in the office the whole time. There was no one on the security cameras, and she was very shaken up by it, so I believe she thinks she saw something. She isn't the kind of kid who makes stuff up or tells stories, and she was visibly shaken by what she saw. But here's the thing. This isn't the first time she has told me about seeing him. When she was 4 years old, she was really upset about seeing a, quote, man with a hat and a beard walk behind one of our porch posts and disappear. There were also a couple of times she came to our room at night and complained about the man that won't stop laughing in her room when she was very young. I don't believe in ghosts, but this is really creeping me out, and it's taking an Oscar-worthy amount of acting to keep the kid from noticing. I should also note that we live in a historic gold rush mining town. I really like this one, as I have a younger sister myself, and the imaginations on children are so vast, but I think they're so massive to the point where we automatically assume that these outlandish claims or things that they witnessed are their imagination, when in reality there could be some strong validity to it. I don't know. I've always just been very intrigued by this acute sense that children have in seeing the paranormal. Same thing with dogs. I don't know, maybe it's because I've never had an experience, and that's why I cling to horror so much. That's pretty naive of me, I know, like wanting something scary to happen to me, even knowing full and well that it could blow up in my face and go wrong. Now this fourth story is titled Family Tradition. A few summers back, me and my brother would go hiking out about where our father used to take us as children. It wasn't far from the cabin we stayed at. Since our father had passed, we'd seen no reason to let such a fond tradition die out. It was mid-July, and we both had time off work, which was perfect. We took some fishing rods, a lunch, and a 6-pack of beers. We'd go to the same place as always and fish, but the hike was hell. But for memory's sake, we did it anyway. We sat by the river talking, smoking cigarettes and drinking our beer, talking about how Dad would joke around and tell us stories of our late mother. We didn't get into stupid discussions, but we did talk about the memories, the joys of it all. I mean, why wouldn't we? Then we started to talk about the stupid stuff, Darth Vader, Batman, etc. It was just fun times to us, even though the conversations were pretty dumb. The sun had started to go down, and the shine of the sparkling water would look like crystal. The temperature started to drop, and that was when we knew it was time to go back. As we were packing up, I was mentioning a memory while laughing, and I asked my brother a question. There was no response. So I repeated myself, and I said, "Hey, did you hear me?" I straightened myself out and looked at my brother while he stared across to the left side of the river as he mutters, "Do you see that? Over there?" "What? Are you drunk already or what?" I laughed and looked at the direction he was looking at, and maybe, roughly about 80 yards away, we see a figure standing on a 20-foot cliff just behind a few trees. It looked like a man, but the head looked smaller and the body was thin, really thin. It shuffled to the side a bit, out of sight. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. "Like hell I'd know." I replied back as I quickly reached into my backpack and pulled out my small pair of binoculars. Looking at this thing was something I had never seen before, especially with the view I had. This thing was gazing over the water, shuffling behind the trees. The head looked like a man, more like an egg, and smaller than any human head. But this thing wasn't human at all. I handed my brother the binoculars, giving him a better look, and he lets out this kind of horrific gasp and lowered the binoculars. It's looking at us. It sees us. The eyes started to glow a ruby red like the color, which was really noticeable. This thing then proceeded to near the edge of the cliff, never taking its gaze off us, and it jumps. Large gray black like wings spread out from what looked like its back and glided away from us over the water. We watched this thing fly at a distance and take a left turn past the trees. We both looked at each other in silence and quickly started packing the rest of our gear and made our way back to the trails and to the cabin. We heard stories about this kind of creature through family friends, neighbors, and camping buddies, but this was the first time that we ever saw it. We've been back to the same spot since to keep the tradition, but we've never seen the creature since then. Now, I really like this one because it really sets a strong atmosphere, especially with the creature. And I love horror creature features, so seeing that and visualizing it was really terrifying. And plus, just wooded areas in the middle of nowhere are just god-awfully terrifying. I won't lie, as we're gonna get into this last story, which I've saved the best for last, I'm now realizing how eerie it is. This is like an open field in the middle of night. I'm feeling kind of good, but yeah, there's a lot of strangers, so I'm trying to get this, relatively quick over with, and plus I don't want any of my stuff to die. I hope you're enjoying it though. Don't forget to like if you haven't already. The final story is called Memento. This happened in January of 2019. My stepdad had been in our family's life for 30 years before he was diagnosed with cancer. He never had any biological children, but he had me and my sister, and we couldn't have asked for a better stepdad or a granddad for our children. I was with him when he was diagnosed and with him for all his treatments. From the very beginning, there was no question of who would take care of him. It was going to be me. He and my mother was split up at the time, and it just seemed natural that I would be the only one to do it because of how close we were. and honestly, I considered it an honor. Unfortunately, his prognosis was not very good, and they gave him less than a year to live. He barely made it 6 months after his diagnosis. He was in the hospital the last 6 days of his life. He had a DNR, and as hard as it was, I didn't argue with him about it. 2 days before he passed, he was in and out of consciousness and was barely able to talk. His last night, he was able to communicate that he really wanted to go home and check on the dogs. This was just after 3 in the morning. I told him I would do that and then I would be right back. He gave me a small smile and nodded. It took 20 minutes for me to get home, and 10 minutes after walking through the door, the hospital called and said he had passed. I felt so guilty for leaving until I thought he knew there was already someone with the dogs, but he insisted that I check on them. Perhaps he didn't want me to be there at that time. I don't know. I still don't know. Now what I do know is that in the morning after he passed, I'd missed a call from his phone that had been in my purse the whole time he was in the hospital. The call was made at 3:47 a.m., and the voicemail that was left said, "Thank you for everything, sweetheart. I love you." That message was left in my stepdad's perfect, loving voice, not the raspy, out-of-breath, strained voice he had moments before he passed. Some people have said that it may have been an old message that I had just received that morning, but either way, I thought it was amazing. Now this one is profound in a way that I don't think the other ones are, because it isn't scary, it's reassuring. And I think all of the stories have a lot to do with paranormal, the beyond, but this one really hits hard, because if you have ever lost a loved one, I think we've all wished to have had that voice message, and I felt like that was such a perfect way to wrap up this video. Again, I really hope you enjoyed it. I love all things scary, and I love doing it in these sort of environments. It's really fun. It takes me out of my comfort zone. And if you enjoyed it, if you like the ambiance, the atmosphere, let me know, because the receptiveness that you guys give is truthfully the best feedback possible. I loved it. So just let me know. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Remember, guys, to take life one frame at a time. Good night, everyone.